Close Up is brought to you by the Kia Sorento R, redefining the power of Kia.
Every generation of students like to think they're the first ones to have a conscience, discover political activism, rage against the machine. For me, it was apartheid. We marched against sporting contact with South Africa. So what fires up the current generation, and when did getting naked come into it? Jahan Castaneda explains.
It's pretty hard to find a car park near Lambton Quay, but if you can, the possibilities are endless. Forget Generation Y, these are the faces of Generation Zero. They have zero shame, and they're zeroing in on curious Wellingtonians.
Would you like to buy a cupcake?
We've put together a bake sale here to raise money for smart transport options, which the government has been neglecting.
Hey there guys, are you interested in a bake sale? We're raising money for... Okay.
And how much money are you trying to raise today?
We're trying to get billions.
Billions of dollars from cupcakes. And where's the money going?
We're sending it over to Parliament later today because the government's not pulling their weight, so we're having to raise funds for them.
This is, of course, a stunt designed to hammer home an important message.
Climate change is one of the most urgent threats to our future.
Louis Chambers stands out. At 22, he's a top law student and a debater. Louis was part of the New Zealand youth delegation to Copenhagen 3 years ago, where world leaders failed to reach a binding agreement on climate change.
It just became obvious that the thing which was holding it up was a lack of political will, because domestic countries weren't willing to take responsibility.
So Louis decided to take responsibility. He's helped to create Generation Zero, a green movement driven by young people.
We'd like to see governments actively planning for how they can reduce emissions. And if we don't take those steps now, it actually becomes more costly the longer we delay.
Climate change is a controversial issue, an issue that can get people's backs up. That's why Generation Zero is using some bizarre tactics to get our attention. They've staged a mock funeral to mark the end of fossil fuels and a big blue flash mob to show the effects of sea level rise. They've even tried to expose issues with transport funding by exposing themselves.
We arrived at a train station at 7 AM and got on some trains and went out into the Hutt Valley. And we stood on these platforms and then got into these trains surreptitiously, planted ourselves throughout them. And slowly, as these trains went back into the Wellington station, we peeled off items of clothing, much to the distress of the people sitting next to me. It really was a talking point for weeks afterwards. People were asking about transport.
The message today, that the government's investment in public transport is, well, half-baked.
We've got here some pink transport cupcakes.
And what's a transport cupcake?
The cupcakes raising money for transport because the government won't pay for public transport.
Currently, for every $5 that goes into highways and roads, $1 goes into cycling, walking, rail freight, trains.
Their stunts are attracting ordinary punters, but Generation Zero says the real onus is on the decision makers.
Government and big businesses have substantial power over the choices we make.
Oh, no, we know roads are actually really important and we understand that. We just want to sort of to balance up the books a little bit.
Generation Zero has members across the country. They're drafting policy solutions and making submissions to local government. But saving the planet costs money. Today's sweet treats have raised $70.
We've been fundraising some money for smart transport options that aren't getting enough government funding, and we thought we'd try and fundraise some ourselves and deliver it to Jerry Brownlee.
Jerry Brownlee wasn't available to accept the money or a piece of cake, but Generation Zero hopes their message gets through.
Just give us a shot at a reasonably safe future, and if we were in your position, we'd be doing it, but we're not. And so we rely on the government taking care for the sake of the young people.